Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here this evening. Digital signature, signs of the Creator in technology. Some of you are having deja vu. I just want to give a shout out to my number one daughter, Sabrina. She did suggest this title, and I do appreciate that. As Dave was introducing me, it dawned on me, we all have something in common. You came here not knowing what I was going to say, and I don't know what I'm going to say either. Before I get into my unrehearsed remarks, though, I do want to say thank you. There are so many people that are involved in putting on a presentation and doing the logistics. I have the easy job. I just stand up here with makeup on and talk. But there's lots of folks in my home congregation, St. Matthew, Port Washington here, who have done a lot of work getting ready. A lot of people, the Creation Science Society of Milwaukee, also involved with the logistics here. And having put on conferences myself, I can tell you it's a lot of work, and it often isn't recognized. So thank you very much. Now I got to look at Pat. He's going to throw it on the other side for me.
Right,
yeah.
yes.
Pat told me I didn't have my mic on before, so we can. What do you think? You ready? There we go. Oh, too many. There we go. Okay. I teach computer science and science at Concordia University, Wisconsin. Sometimes people wonder, what does computer science have to do with this at all? Well, you've heard of Apple Pay, right? Adam and Eve ate it, and boy, are we paying. Sometimes, yeah, come on, keep going here. Sometimes people say, so what's the connection between computer science and creation? I think we're all very familiar with the original sin, but are you familiar with the second sin of Adam and Eve? Adam and Eve's second sin, of course, was using technology to perform arithmetic. You're saying, what? That was contrary to God's command. Yes, in Genesis 9, verse 7, it says, as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth. Nothing about using a calculator there. Multiply on the... These are not working. Okay, we'll try one more. One more. Why did PowerPoint cross the road? To get to the other slide. Yeah, everybody laughs at that one. Good. Following in the footsteps of one of my sainted mentors, the Reverend Dr. John Saleska, I like to use a hymn to sort of focus our attention. There's so many great hymns. This hymn, if you want to sing, it's in our hymnal here, but I'm just going to read 2 stanzas of this for you. You could see it's entitled, Before You, Lord, We Bow. You may not be able to pick out who that is. That's Francis Scott Key, who wrote this hymn. Can I just read to you 2 stanzas? Before you, Lord, we bow, our God who reigns above, and rules the world below in boundless power and love. Our thanks we bring in joy and praise, our hearts we raise to you, our King. And I think stanza 4 talks to what we're going to be discussing this evening directly. Earth, hear your Maker's voice, your great Redeemer own. Believe, obey, rejoice, and worship him alone. Cast down your pride, your sin deplore, and bow before the crucified. So, what in the world is a signature? When you look it up in the dictionary, it says something like one's name as written by oneself. But I think a better definition comes a little bit later in most dictionaries. A distinctive mark, characteristic, or sound indicating identity. Your signature represents you. Your signature stands in your place. It provides authentication that this document, this thing, originated with you. Anybody remember the time when we physically signed pieces of paper? Come on, okay? It's interesting. Some signatures we recognize immediately, and people use John Hancock sort of as shorthand for a signature. Lots of famous signatures in history, you recognize John Hancock. You could probably, oh, I walked too far away. There we go. You could probably recognize Abraham Lincoln. This next one's a famous one, and unless you've seen it before, you're going to say, oh, go back. Anybody know what that one is? That's the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. Interesting, okay? And you may recognize this one. Recently departed Queen Elizabeth. And of course, the R at the end is Regina, Latin for queen. So when Queen Elizabeth signed my lordship papers, even though she is now departed, you may still refer to me as sir. I'm just kidding. That did not happen. Okay. Now today, we digitally sign documents. A digital signature provides an additional level of assurance about the validity and the authenticity of a digital document. People can forge these things, except for Donald Trump's, right? But a digital signature, electronic encrypted stamp of authentication on digital information. The signature confirms that the information originated with the signee and has not been altered. So, the question before us this evening, and what I want to share with you is, has the Creator signed his creation? Are there distinctive marks or characteristics in creation from the Creator? Can we recognize the Creator's signature in technology? So you may be familiar with this, the signature in the cell. Although it is a current Stephen Meyer book, the idea predates him. But the idea is the information content in DNA is truly the Creator's signature. All right, let's see this. Has the Creator signed his creation? I'm going to argue yes, absolutely. Let's use technology, and let me give you 3 evidences that support the idea of creation. I believe that technology provides great evidence for creation, both directly and by analogy. By the way, as a college professor, I have to, if they don't follow these notes directly, we'll never get out of here, because otherwise I'll just be off on a number of tangents, and people can tell you, yep, he can really talk, for sure. Let's think about human creativity. I'm going to suggest that human creativity is great evidence for creation. A little bit of this painting here is by Lucas Cranach. Lucas Cranach was a friend and contemporary of Martin Luther. Now, he signed his paintings. And even if he didn't, we'd be able to recognize his distinct style. Human creativity provides strong evidence for creation. On the other hand, evolution has no way to explain human creativity or creativity of any kind. If creativity is just a natural process, then why aren't all forms of life created? Why aren't apes creating masterpieces? Why doesn't my dog sing? Okay, my granddaughter dog howls. Okay, Kiki howls a lot. My dog is really quiet. Why are human beings creative? Here's the answer. The reason that human beings are creative is because we were created in God's image. We were originally, and we are specifically, created in God's image. Genesis 1, then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, on the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth, and subdue it. rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Image, by the way, does not refer to physical appearance. Image doesn't mean we look like God. Students tell me I look very angelic. But God the Father is a spirit, so certainly we don't reflect that. Image refers to characteristics or attributes. Now, well tarnished because of the fall, but yet, as both Genesis 9 says and James 3 says, we are still created in God's image. Created in his image, we reflect some of the Creator's attributes, including the desire to create things ourselves, and especially in the 21st century, technological tools. J.R.R. Tolkien said, human beings are sub-creators. In God's image, quote from Tolkien, we are sub-creators. Human beings are creative. We share this creative power of God. Our creations bear our image and reflect what is in our hearts and souls. And Luther had a good quote about this too. And because I didn't put it in my notes, I'm not going to go off on it. But Luther said, even before Tolkien, we are sub-creators. And guess what? God said it in Genesis 2. Fred Brooks, a computer scientist whose name you don't have to know, wrote an essay called The Gift of Sub-Creation. The Gift of Sub-Creation. And this is what he said. A little reflection shows us that the power to make things, computer scientists, that's what we do. We make things all the time. The power to make things in imitation of our Maker is a gift for our sake, not his. As he scornfully reminded the people of Israel, he doesn't need our creative powers. The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. If I were hungry, would I ask you? Said God. So why are we sub-creators? So we conclude this ability and this call to create are given to us to enrich our lives, but more importantly, as a vocation to love and serve our neighbor. Human creativity. Now you think that technology is like really recent. Okay? Oh, you see that old crusty thing? It was dug up out of the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea about 100 years ago. And people looked at that and said, I have no idea what that is. After some investigation, we've discovered that it dates to about 100 BC. This is the Antikythera mechanism. No, you don't need to spell it. The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek astronomical analog calculator. This was used by the Greeks to determine high tide, low tide, phase of the moon, etc. Amazing. 2100, okay, we won't read about that. Exodus 31. The Lord said to Moses, see, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. This creativity is a birthday gift from the Creator himself. And yes, human beings are wonderfully creative. Is there any way to explain creativity naturally, spontaneously? Well, of course, we have lots of examples of that happening. I like to fancy myself as an amateur rock hound. This is what you see there. That rock is a pretty ordinary piece of feldspar that I located in mid-Wisconsin. And when I found it, in that feldspar was growing Dave's smartphone. Why don't you, I got photographic evidence. Why don't you believe? You don't believe me because you say, that is a created artifact. And I recognize it took creativity. Its creative complexity clearly shows it was created. If you don't have anything to do, look up how evolutionary scientists explain creativity. A couple years ago in Scientific American, a big article, The Origins of Creativity. I'm not even going to read the quote to you. You know what the answer is? Don't got a clue. Now, that's not exactly what they say. Okay, 40,000 years ago this happened, 30,000, no, I'm sorry, didn't happen. Okay. Creativity is a powerful evidence of Creator. One of God's signatures in us, human beings, is the ability to create, in His image to be sub-creators. God's signature in us is creativity. Evidence 2. Technology provides great evidence for creation, both directly and by analogy. Evidence 2. Information content. The information can't see it very well, I apologize. Can you tell what that is? It's supposed to be the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone, as you recall, had the same thing in 3 different languages. It was carved on stone. That's why it's called the Rosetta Stone. The information content in our creative artifacts clearly shows that it required creative intelligence to produce. Do rocks spontaneously generate language? They do not. Here is some great convincing evidence for creation. And personally, this is my favorite evidence, so I really have to stick to my notes, otherwise I go far afield. I refer to this as information theory. The Rosetta Stone conveys information via language. But the question is, what's the origin of that? What's the origin of information? As of 2022, this is the world's most powerful supercomputer. This is Frontier, paid for by your tax dollars. Thank you for doing that. Now, we don't care a whole lot about the specs, but I got to pull out one thing. This machine has nearly 5 petabytes of RAM. 5 petabytes of RAM. That's more than your computer. That's more than your phone. What's a peta? A peta is 2 to the 50th power. That's about 10 to the 15th power. So that's 5 with 15 zeros. That's how much bytes are in this thing. Okay? What's the origin of this information processing technology? The information content in our created artifacts clearly shows that intelligence was necessary in the design, the building, and the use. Tech does not arise spontaneously. That Antikythera mechanism did not grow in the bottom of the Mediterranean. It was lost when the ship went down. Information theory says a bunch of things. One thing that information theory says is information only comes from intelligence. If you have information, there's only one scientifically plausible explanation. It must have come from intelligence. Let me work 2 examples with you. First of all, a little low tech, a book. Yeah? Okay. Now, since you're not students in my class, you won't get it. But in class, I'm always doing the Chuck Norris shtick. If you don't know who Chuck Norris is, it's okay, but shame on you. Chuck Norris is one of these iconic, he's a real person, a martial artist, a film, movie star, etc., Walker, Texas Ranger. But he's always given superhuman abilities. We'll get to that in a moment. If you see a book, you can correctly conclude that that book had an author. Even if you never met the author, even if you don't have a signed poster by Chuck Norris in your office like I do, you can be assured that, that's one of the true things I've said so far. You can be assured that even though you didn't see him write it, even though you never met him, a book implies an author. All right. Now, so you get a flavor of the Chuck Norris shtick. Pastor's going to spoil it for us. Chuck Norris doesn't read books. He stares them down to get the information he wants. I laugh because that's funny. The corollary here is even better. Chuck Norris doesn't write books either. The words assemble themselves out of fear. Exactly. What I want to point out is information can only come from intelligence. If you think that perhaps random dots could somehow develop their own meaning, let me show you that's impossible. Do you know what this is? It doesn't say. This is a secret code. Codes do not develop their own meaning. Now, see, today, I was going to pick up my granddaughter, but she would never do this in class. She wouldn't text her friend in class. Today, all my students would text each other in class. In the bad old days, we had to write a note, right? And if the teacher got the note that said, Mr. Parks is a fink, you were in big trouble. So we didn't write Mr. Parks is a fink, we wrote that. And then when Mr. Parks said, what's this? Okay. Well, what is that? It's a very simple substitution cipher. Okay? Without spending the time, you just draw that figure. And see, if you drew a box, that'd be an E. If you drew a box with a dot in it, that'd be an R. And then you got various little symbols there. And there it is. Easy. Now, once you know the code, could you go back and decipher that? I don't want to do it. Okay, I'll do it for you. Right? Yes, but that's the point. That has no meaning in and of itself. It only has meaning because intelligent human beings gave it meaning. So when I decode it, it says that. And it's too late. You should have done it while you had the chance. Codes do not naturally and spontaneously arise. They are created. Information does not naturally and spontaneously arise. It is created. So, where did the information content in tech come from? It wasn't somehow naturally present in silicon chips. It was put into that by intelligent human beings. If you want to know what information theory is all about, I want you to read Proverbs 8. It's tough. Read it carefully. I'm going to suggest that you pull out Martin Luther's commentary on this, because he nailed it. Okay? In Proverbs 8, Solomon personifies wisdom. He says, I, wisdom, dwell with knowledge and prudence. And some commentators think, well, it says wisdom was the first of his creation. Who's that talking about? It's not talking about a who. It's talking about a what. The Trinity was present. But the first that came forth from their intelligence was information. This is just information theory. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. So, what's the evidence that I'm trying to get across here? On the one hand, we have technology with information. Where did that information come from? It came from people. Is there any possible way that you can convince a reasonable human being that that technology developed its own information? No way. No way. You know those 5 petabytes of memory in the world's best supercomputer? That pales to the processing that goes on in every single cell in your body. Question: where did the information content come from all the DNA in all of us? Answer: originally created by God. That's called science. It's called information theory. God's signature in us is information. Third evidence from technology. I think technology can provide great evidence for creation, both directly and by analogy. The third one is what I call the trinitarian creative process. If you investigate how human beings create things, and that's what computer scientists do. The job of a computer scientist is to investigate problem solving. If you investigate how people solve problems, I have discovered that we solve problems in a threefold manner. Humans create in a trinitarian manner, mirroring the creative process employed by God. God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all involved in creation. Here is what I consider some great evidence for the original creation. Again, this is a picture by Lucas Cranach, a painting by Lucas Cranach, a painting of the Trinity. Boy, is it hard. You know, I think maybe sometimes some people who take no graven images to an extreme may have something. How do you represent God the Father? The old guy there? Yeah, okay. But God is Trinitarian in nature. We mirror that when we create. All creative acts have three aspects. Let me explain them, and then let me give you an example in two different ways. Creativity involves three aspects. Number one, idea. Idea is the mental model of what it is you want to create. It's the formulation in your mind, or if you're Greek, it's formulation in your gut. It's the inside stuff where you run it all around and say, Now, this is where my students want to stop, because they'll come to me and say, wow, I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I don't disagree. But idea is not the totality of the creative process. The second aspect of creativity is implementation. You've got to get that mental model out of your mind and down in a concrete form. If you're writing a paper, guess what? You gotta write the paper. Yeah. Now, at this point in time, again, many students think, oh, the job is done. I wrote it, I turned it in, that's it. No, you know what? There's a third and very important aspect of creativity. Idea, implementation, interaction. Someone, some other mind needs to interact with your product. Without that, it was totally wasted. Let me give you a couple of examples. A tech example. Okay, let me give you a low-tech example. Oh, by the way, speaking of technology, I was astounded to discover this the other day. Did you know that clothes drying is extremely high-tech? Clothes drying was one of the very first examples of high technology. Clothes drying was the first technology that went online. Think about a book. A book requires an idea. You formulate that idea in your mind. And if you talk to an author, Ren Kramer has authored a number of books. If you talk to the author, hey, are you writing that book? He'd probably say yes, even though he hasn't put anything down on paper. Don't disagree with me, please. He'd probably say yes. Why? Because he's been formulating that all in his mind, right? Going through it. You talk to, some well-known, my favorite author is Dorothy Sayers. She died a long time ago, but she often said, if she was asked, have you finished your latest book? She'd say, yes, I just haven't written it down yet. Okay? All that time of the idea. And then after the idea comes the hard work of actually, here comes that 5-syllable word, instantiation. I wasn't going to say it, but since you brought it up. What? Sorry, that's a computer science. It just means do it, make it. Okay? So now comes the hard part of actually writing it down. And we know that's not a linear process. Oh, I'm done. Okay? No, that's hard work also. But then the final aspect, if nobody reads what you wrote, what good was it? Well, you know, the worst thing for a presenter would be to look out and there's nobody there. Okay? Now, I'd still do it. I brought my granddaughter to make sure I'd have at least one person here that I could talk to. But if nobody read the book, what good would it be? Exactly. Idea, implementation, interaction, threefold aspects of the creative process. This same thing applies to true high technology. That's what I teach students in computer science. The idea of the app, the implementation of the app, and the one thing few computer scientists think about, the interaction of the app. A user's going to have to use that dumb thing that you created. Would you please think about that and make it better? The human creative process is a spectacularly good evidence for creation. God's signature in us is the fact that we create in a trinitarian way. I'm preaching to the choir from this next one, but I think it fits so well. I have people telling me all the time, hey, you said God created, I need evidence. Look, that's what I don't mean to be facetious about that. Isn't that what Paul says in Romans 1? It is, exactly. If you open up your eyes and look, you will see the Creator's signature. It's everywhere. Evidence for the Creator via His signature. We've seen 3 evidences in the created world. But you know the absolute best evidence is the signature in His Word. All those things I've talked about is just what we consider apologetics. Just getting rid of the barriers to get people to this point. Here's where it really happens. You want to know about the Creator? Read it in His Word. You see all these things with technology today, like create an account? Yeah. Better practice now, because in the end, you will be giving an account. Okay, all right. Folks, that would probably be enough, but I'm a college professor, and there's never enough. I want to do a little segue, because I don't think that any discussion of technology is complete without my favorite subject of technology. It's only favorite because I did it. TMNT. I'll tell you what it stands for in a minute. But here's my segue. I teach a graduate level course at Concordia University entitled Vocation and Ethical Computing, where we try to impart to our master level computer scientists the importance of professionalism, what is vocation, and why is a Christian ethic so important in the world of high technology. Technology provides a wonderful evidence for creation, yet there is a dark side to technology that we need to address. Why is ethics and understanding what tech is all about so important? Technology amplifies. That's what that represents. Technology amplifies. Think about this. 50 years ago, if you wanted to gossip, you had some salacious news about somebody. Oh, let's ignore whether it's true or false, right? Let's just throw all those commandments out of it. We don't need that. I got to tell somebody. So what did you do 50 years ago? Well, you went to the back fence, told one person, called up your neighbor, one person. It was just one-on-one, right? What about today? You want to gossip about somebody? How many people does a tweet reach? 17 million. Facebook claims 2 billion users. That's a quarter of the population of planet Earth. Yeah. Technology amplifies human ideas, human actions. Exactly. Okay. So what's the dark side of technology? Oh, don't look at that yet. Have I told you I hate technology? The myth of neutral technology. This is TMNT. Now, some of you will have no idea what this means either. Some of you have no idea why there's a picture of 4 cartoonish turtles there. Because that's the TMNT, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But this is not that. Sorry, TMNT. Does technology do something to us? We always talk about technology doing something for us. Does technology do something to us? Well, I got to ask my friends. Do you remember when this icon represented see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil? In the high-tech world, apparently it stands for let's hear a lot of evil, let's see a lot of evil, let's say a lot of evil. Chuck has to make a return. If you look on your computer, you'll see a key called CTRL. That's the, if you don't know, that's the control key. Now, unlike all of your computers, Chuck Norris' computer does not have a control key. Chuck Norris is always in control. Thank you. Chuck Norris' computer doesn't have an escape key either. No one escapes from Chuck Norris. But what's interesting is, what's in control here? Are we in control of the technology? Is the technology in control of us? You know, people used to tell me all the time, well, computers only do what they're programmed to do. That is not true. It wasn't true in the 20th century. It's absolutely not true in the 21st century. Okay? Rather than just a benign tool, technology has been created, and much of it has been created to manipulate us. Has technology been you're kidding. Technology been created to manipulate us? Yes. Okay? Now, I have some of that quote there. I have a longer part of it here. This is a former vice president of Facebook. He says social media is destroying society with, in his word, dopamine-driven feedback loops. Dopamine is the idea, get a little bit, need a little bit. Get a little bit, need a little bit. That is social media. Get a like, I need another one. Get a retweet, I need another one. He spoke out about his tremendous guilt over growing the social network, which he feels has eroded the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other. In the beginning, there was not much thought given to the long-term negative consequences of developing such a platform. In his words, I think in the back, deep, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. Yeah. This is Facebook's first president, Sean Parker. He said, we purposely created something addictive. We purposefully created something addictive. With each like and comment, Facebook is exploiting human psychology on purpose to keep users hooked on social validation feedback loop. It's exactly the kind of thing a hacker like me would come up with. Parker finishes, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. Before it became, it's interesting historically. There was a time, 2.5 years ago, when big tech was the big bad guy. And then something happened. No more stories in 2022 about big bad tech. You know what happened? We'll talk about it. 2014, Facebook deliberately manipulated people's newsfeed. They did an experiment with 600,000 users. They gave half of them only positive, uplifting, happy tales in their newsfeed. And the other half they gave sad, depressing, violent things in their newsfeed. They wanted to see, is there such a thing as social contagion? Could you catch intellectual problems as well as physical viruses? Can you? Absolutely. Is there such a thing as social contagion? People exposed to lots of happy, uplifting things, are they in general more happy and uplifting? And vice versa? Yes. Interesting. I, at one time in my short life and career, that was a joke too, would have told you that technology is just neutral. It's just like a hammer, right? It's just a tool. It can be used for good or bad. I've changed my mind. Is technology neutral? Or does it reflect its human creators, both good and bad? Technology does reflect our image. Go to Millennium Park in Chicago, that's the cloud gate. Nobody calls it that, that big aluminum thing. Everybody calls it the beam. You stood there and seen it, right? Yeah. Technology reflects our image. From a creation worldview perspective, it makes perfect sense. Tech should reflect our image. We reflect God's image, tech reflects ours. But there's a serious problem, and it's called the fall. So tech isn't always happy and uplifting, isn't it? Sometimes people leave, well, I've only given this presentation once before, but I want you to leave understanding exactly what I'm saying. Technology can be good. Some tech can be created for good. And technology can be bad. Some technology can be created for evil. It's possible to use good technology for bad purposes. It's also possible to use bad technology for good purposes. It's all about the attitude of the heart. Now, if you think I'm just blowing smoke, I mean, again, 2.5 years ago and before, look at all the headlines. I mean, this is an actual headline reflected in many different news outlets. Silicon Valley tech founders admit how online companies manipulate billions of minds. Even if you believe that technology is neutral, human beings are not. I am both good and bad, saint and sinner. The tools that I create are going to reflect the aspects and the attitude of my heart. And as good as I am, if I can't do it well, I'm a little worried about people who have great evil intent in their heart, sharing huge corporations like Meta, that's Facebook, or Alphabet, that's Google. You know, Martin Luther had it exactly right. This is what he called sin. Homo incurvatus in se, Latin. Humanity curved in on itself. Sin is being curved in on myself. It's not looking out to God, it's looking inward to me. Our creations bear our image. They reflect what's in our hearts and souls. Tolkien said it best. In God's image, we are sub-creators. Right? But yeah, that's everybody. Tolkien, if you don't like the movies, that wasn't his fault, right? He didn't do the movies. You know, he wrote the books. Okay, good. Yeah. Whew. Why can tech be good or bad? It's the attitude of the user's heart. This is how Jesus put it in Luke 6. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Or we could say, that man creates what his heart is full of. You've all used technology. You may not be aware of this concept. This is something that technologists exploit. It's called dark patterns. Let me read you the official definition. A dark pattern, or more commonly called a deceptive design pattern, is a user interface that has been purposely created to deceive users. Purposefully created to deceive the user. Got all great names like confirm sharing. You know, if you say, no, I don't want that, then a pop-up comes up. Are you sure you don't want to save money? What will your friends say? Would your mother approve of that? Confirm sharing, you know, trick questions. My favorite one is depthing. If you shop online at Amazon, and I've tried to expunge that, you make your own determination. It's really hard. I tried to expunge Google from my life, really, really hard, okay? Amazon, how many clicks to buy a product? How many clicks to cancel that purchase? And yeah, you know when people say, can't figure out how to do it. Oh well, send the truck. You know, on the other hand, some tech just is great. And it's naturally great. I remember the first time I used a mouse. That tells you how old I am. The first time I used a mouse, it just clicked. Oops. Yeah. Folks, we don't have time to get into this article. It's a great article. How social media is designed around sin. Social media specifically. Now I'm going to pick on Facebook. I could do that because my wife's not here. And she'll bring up the counter to that. I told you that bad tech could be used for good. And some people do that well. But if you don't know, and many people are just sucked in, social media preys on our sinful nature and encourages us to turn in on ourselves. How many likes do I've got? How many retweets are there? How many people commented on my posts? It's all about me. By the way, if you don't think there is a cult of technology, you're not into it. You're not into it. Let me share with you the cult of technology. This is a little quote referring to, who's that dumb guy? Oh, Albert Einstein. Okay? This I think is very interesting. An education obsessed with science, technology, engineering, and math. That sound like something that's touted today? An education obsessed with science, technology, engineering, and math to the exclusion or neglect of the humanities stems the growth and development of the human person on the one hand, and unleashes technology without ethical constraints on the other. Only a fool would advocate such an education. And I guess it's safe to say that Albert Einstein was not a fool. He's writing those words in the mid-20th century. No discussion of technology would be complete without talking about artificial intelligence. When we talk about AI or artificial intelligence, you may recognize the person there died about 4 years ago. Man, I lose track of time. This is the British scientist Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking was an atheist evolutionary scientist, a huge proponent of the Big Bang. His books showed mathematically how we don't need God for the formation and development of the universe, or at least so he thought. This brilliant person was scared out of his wits by artificial intelligence. During the last years of his life, I think he wrote more about AI than he did about the Big Bang. That's a direct quote. The development of AI could spell the end of the human race. A brilliant mind scared of AI? Why? He knew about the corrupt nature of people. He knew that people were going to create technology in their own image. By the way, he had a totally incorrect worldview. But he did figure that much out. Huh. This is an article getting near the end of the bad tech era. That ended in 2019. This is a 2018 article, a report authored by 24 experts on the implications of emerging technology is sounding the alarm bells on the ways artificial intelligence could enable new forms of cybercrime, physical attacks, political disruption, and so it goes on over the next 10 years. Yep. Question: is artificial intelligence, that technology, is it good or is it bad? How do we determine that? Well, here's what Jesus said, Matthew 15. But what comes out of the mouth, and we're just going to use that as idea, implementation, interaction, creating anything. For what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. Some artificial intelligence is good. As a matter of fact, you have probably benefited from a lot of good AI. Do you use GPS? That's AI. Do you use a personal digital assistant like Hey SIR? If I say, Hey Siri, 5 phones are going to go off. Okay? Hey Alexa, hey. I did that in class, and there was a student watching at a distance. He said, oh, my echo just came. Yeah, exactly. Some AI is good. There's no question. While some AI was created for good, some AI certainly was not. By the way, this is an interesting thing. You've done all these things, right? These are called CAPTCHAs. And the purpose is to prove that you are not a robot. I find it funny that several times a day I have to tell a computer I'm not a computer. But the bad thing about, think about these CAPTCHAs, they always come up. Identify the traffic lights in here. If robots cannot identify traffic lights, yeah, should they be driving Teslas? Some AI was created for, if my wife would say, if you laugh at my jokes, you're just going to encourage me, so please stop it, okay? While some AI was created for good, other were not. This is part of a whole section of AI called strong AI. The goal of strong AI is human equivalence. The stated goal of strong AI research and strong AI researchers is to produce human equivalence. Is that a good thing? I'm going to go out on a limb and say, nope. Human beings were created in God's image with a soul and a spirit. Now, how can I be so sure that this, the human equivalence goal of strong AI research, is up to no good? This is their goal. The stated goal of strong AI research is eternal life. Eternal life apart from God. I spent some time trying to find the earliest popular level account of strong AI research, and I found a news article from 1987. That's 1987. This is what it says. If you can survive beyond the next 50 years or so, you may not have to die at all. That's one vision of the future being fashioned on the frontiers of robotics and AI research, where many of the nation's experts are now talking in terms once reserved for the wildest science fiction. Quotes Hans Moravec, he says, there's little we can do to avoid a future world run by super intelligent robots unless, he says, we become the super intelligent robots ourselves. Now, strong AI is what researchers call it. The rest of you call it transhumanism. Simply put, transhumanism is a broad intellectual movement that advocates for the transformation of humanity through technology. Transhumanists say, well, either evolution isn't happening for people, or it's not happening fast enough. So we're going to take charge of our evolution, and we're going to augment ourselves with technology. You know all those science fiction things, you know, 7 of 9, the Borg in Star Trek and all that kind of stuff? That's exactly what we're talking about. Either adding stuff, technology to the human body, or more likely, downloading your mind into a machine where you will now live forever. Did you know that there is a church of artificial intelligence? A recognized 501c3, is that the right thing, or is it 503? Whatever it is. A recognized charitable organization, at least in the state of California. You're saying, well, that explains it. Anthony Lewandowski, and the church is called Way of the Future. That's his quote. What is it all about? We're going to focus on the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computer, hardware, and software. At this point, we need to pull ourselves back and say, who decides what's right and what's wrong? I'm just going to put forth my thesis again that this is a struggle, not only within every human being, but also among human beings also. Some technology is designed to be addicting. Some technology is designed, purposely designed, to bring out the worst in us. Do you know what kind of engine powers Satan's car? An infernal combustion engine. For us as Christians with a creation foundation, thankfully we don't have to wonder. We do have a standard. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things, Paul said in Philippians. Does it sound like Lewandowski's Way of the Future? Does it sound like strong AI? Of course not. But there is some good news. What's our message to the world that's in the cult of tech? We've got some great news for them, right? See, what they're searching for, eternal life, is already freely available. It doesn't depend upon a bug-ridden AI system, does it either? When Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me, we know. Here is an absolute that we can share with all those folks mired in the cult of technology. Yeah. What a story. Oops, he's got 5 more minutes. Good. I alluded to this before. Now, put on your thinking caps and drag out that memory. There was a time, I'm not kidding you, at the beginning of the 21st century when big tech was bad. Everybody in the news media, all the activists, big tech is bad. That all ended in the end of 2019. And today, do you see stories like this? How Google and Facebook hooked us and how to break the habit? No, you don't. Okay? Why? Because big tech became our savior. Right? Yeah. Okay. I always want to provide you with a practical tip. Do I got it? Come on. Okay? That's my wife. She says, I've heard you before. I'm not coming this evening. My wife is an equine scientist. That's one of our horses there. What's this have to do with it? If you're serious about doing creation apologetics, if you're serious about sharing creation, I got to tell you why we're doing that in a minute. If you're serious about sharing creation apologetics, here's what you do. Do I have to know everything about creation and evolution? No. At the Dave mentioned, at the last one, all these questions about the Big Bang. Fine, it's okay. I only pretend to know. I really don't know. Here's my hot tip. Pick one evidence for creation. There are hundreds of evidences. You don't have to pick a technology one. Just pick one evidence that you like, that resonates with you. You learn it and you use it. You see, when people if they're talking to my wife and they happen to say something about evolution, they may say, who knows what? My wife says, that's interesting. Can I share with you 29 reasons why the horse's hoof was designed? Now, there probably are, but she doesn't say that. Can I just share with you a couple reasons on why the horse's hoof was designed and could not have developed naturally? Now see, the person hearing that might say, oh, well, what about homology? What about I don't know. But have you stopped and considered that? That's planting the seed. I got some other ones. We'll see who got time for that. I just wanted to show you my wife. Isn't she pretty? Thankfully, we do have a standard for truth. And this is a question that I get too. How do you know whom to trust? How do you know whom to believe? I didn't do it today, but I start off every one of my classes telling my students two important things about me. Number one, I don't know everything. And number two, I make mistakes. That's true. Anybody who tries to tell you they know everything, they're mistaken, right? We don't. How do you know whom to trust? Well, this is what my wife does. She says, here's what you do. Can you trust your doctor? Ask your doctor, how many genders are there? There's a correct answer to that question. If your doctor doesn't know, or won't say, or cannot define woman, they're not qualified. Okay? They're not qualified. So, how do you know? Well, if you're talking to another human being, first of all, you look at their worldview. If their worldview is a Christ-centered worldview, it could be closer, not perfect. Secondly, you do what Paul told the Thessalonians. Test everything. Hold on to the good. Don't take my word for it. You test it. Test it against what? There's the standard. God's word. Finally, you have to recognize all people are biased. Everyone is biased. Thankfully, I know the one who is not. What's the purpose of creation apologetics? What's the purpose of creation in general? It is not to win arguments. It is not to impress people. The only legitimate purpose of creation apologetics is to point to Christ. We do this such that we can strip away whatever that person's, there couldn't have been a God because look at this. Oh, what about this? And then ultimately we get to point them to the Creator himself. Isn't that what the Creator said in Colossians? For by him all things were created. All things were created through him and for him, and without him nothing was created. On that handout, I have a couple resources listed there. There are thousands of great resources. I'm just keeping this in the family. My number 2 daughter, Valerie Locklear III, wrote a book called To Defend. You want to know how to do apologetics? This is what you need. Okay? The website is part of an organization called 1517. That year might mean something to Lutherans. 1517.org carries her book. My website is pathetic. You know what it is. The shoemaker, the kids have no shoes, the technologist, he doesn't do his own technology, okay? But on my website, creationisreasonable.org, I have a video series on creation apologetics that I give a shout out to Pastor Wildauer because he graciously allowed me to take over the Bible class and actually pretend I know what I'm talking about. And he only twice said, you don't know what you're talking about. So that video series is there and some other things. So feel free to avail yourself of that. With that, I apologize. I know, wow, an hour and 15 minutes. It's a long time to sit. If you need to stand up, feel free to do so. But I'm also willing to entertain questions.